Welcome to the Clip and Clarity podcast. We have a special guest today, Max Sznewajs. He is an agency producer, a filmmaker, among many more things, wears a lot of different hats. We're super excited to have him here. And a new face on the podcast. Maybe you saw him in the newsletter, but Cole Hammondtree is also here, part of the Taproot team. And Nate is in the background working because he actually has stuff to do today. But we're gonna be chatting all things filmmaking, and we're really excited to have you here. Thanks for coming, Max.
Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah. I maybe a quick background on how we met and became friends, I'll say now, right?
Absolutely.
We worked on a couple projects together, and most recently we worked on a project together that took us out to Montana, which was kind of a wild, freezing tundra environment, rapid sort of content shoot, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think we had a great time, right?
Oh, we had
if
a
I'm not
blast.
mistaken.
No, yeah, we had a blast. I keep asking like my boss, like, when can we get another like project out in Montana or just anywhere like in the wilderness?
Right. I was scared a little bit, to be honest with you. Number 2 terrain, I think, is what it was in Ski Mag. So this was Big Sky Resort, and I actually hadn't been on like a ski slope or a mountain in probably 8 years. Used to live in Colorado, so I hadn't had a chance to snowboard or anything. But luckily, I think was able to pick it back up.
Well, you mean you had more experience than I did? I mean, that was my second time skiing ever.
Really?
Yeah, that was my second time skiing ever.
I did not know that.
Ever.
Oh my goodness.
First time I done it, I was in like 8th grade.
You did awesome.
I think it's just come from 15, 20 years of hockey.
Okay.
I still remember whoever we had, like the instructor that was kind of like our guide that day. She's like, I'm going to give you some advice that's going to like mess with your mind. She goes, lean forward. And says, because I was like, when you play hockey, like you're always leaning back, like to get low. She's like, lean forward. And it like cured everything. It was really gnarly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I wouldn't have been able to tell because you were just, you were keeping up and
trying my best.
We were doing, I mean, it was pretty gnarly in some
it was,
of those.
Yeah. When we were out there, like, because we got to go out before kind of the whole resort opened, which was amazing. But it's just like, you guys just kind of went and I was like, all right, got to keep up, got to keep up or I'm going to get lost out here. So.
Yeah. I remember you like, hey, can you guys do this? Are you the right production company for this job? And, I knew that I had the capability. I knew that, Chris had the capability and Cole had snowboarded and we had a few other people to make the right team for you. Right. But, you get up there on the mountain, it's pretty intimidating.
I remember just getting off the ski lift and then just like you go over and, like we had to go down this one like side hill. It's just like, okay. Yeah, it's a bit higher than I thought, but yeah. So
well, let's rewind.
Sure.
Tell us like, how did you get into filmmaking? You mentioned film school. Tell us, give us the Max
backstory.
Yeah.
The Max story.
Yeah. The origin story.
The origin story. All right. So if we go back many years, so I know if any young kids listening to this, they're not going to know what a DVD is, I feel like. But so back in the day, there were these 2-disc DVDs, and the first one was like the movie, and then the second one was always like the behind the scenes or whatnot. Yep. And I was one day, I think my parents were out, I was like, we had a babysitter over, and I just put, so the Phantom Menace, the Star Wars, like I know it's not everyone's favorite, but at the time I was loving watching it because it was just cool, but I accidentally put the second disc in, and I just hit play, and it was it was like a 3-hour behind the scenes like documentary of how they made this thing, and my mind was just blown. Wow. I was like, I want to do that. Like I want to, like, it's just seeing like Ewan McGregor like look at all the different lightsaber like holsters and whatnot, and I was like, whoa, like he got to pick, like just seeing all this stuff and like the blue screen and how the guys are jumping up around and doing all this stuff, and I was like, okay, I want to do that. So fast forward in high school, I would do kind of like the promotional videos for like the hockey team or like basketball games or stuff that was going on, and they got better. And then I would do like the campaign videos, we do like Student Senate and whatnot. And so I'd make those and I'd kind of copy them off of just like music videos. I think we did like a Beastie Boys, like a Sabotage lookalike video for one of the campaigns, which was really fun. And then thankfully I got into film school. I don't think I'd be able to get in there now, if I'm being honest, because it was just the more I look at it, it's like, because I always wanted to be a director originally. And then as I kind of started to do it, I was like, this is freaking hard, man. Like, and I realized I didn't have kind of the like, because you always have to kind of see what you want to cut prior
Right.
to that. You have to have the whole thing in your head. And I would have like little bits of it here and there, but the more I would do it, it was like it wasn't clicking, if that makes sense. And then it really kind of the click into producing happened. I think it was my junior and senior year of college, because that's when you do kind of your thesis films. And I directed both of them, but on my senior one, my producer literally was like, please stop doing my job. Like, give me a shot list. Like I'm happy to do this. But so then a quick backstory on that one was, so I went to Loyola Marymount out in LA for film school. Brilliant, most beautiful campus ever. If you guys ever get a chance to go out there, it's right by LAX. It's on a bluff overlooking like the ocean, and everyone thinks like Pepperdine. Like, no, LMU is way better. Really? Yeah, Pepperdine's gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, but that's up in Malibu. And Malibu's a pain in the butt to get to anyway.
We went out there a couple years ago, and it was my first time driving by Pepperdine, and I'm like, "Are you serious?"
Like, Pepperdine's excellent. But
wow.
Yeah.
It's nuts. So better, is
in
what
my
you're saying.
opinion, better.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Like for some people, I think I didn't live on campus my junior year, but like the junior year or like the junior like apartments or whatever, it's like a multi-million-dollar view if you get like the right suite. Wow. It's just overlooking like Culver City and like the beach and Santa Monica and like all that. It
sounds tough.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to focus. I mean, the library alone too is just view. Like it's amazing.
That's awesome. Is it what kind of program is that? Like, is that a 4-year program?
Yep, it's a 4-year undergrad program. So it's I guess I'll brag a little bit. It's like the number 6 or 7 film school in the world, like listed.
Awesome. Okay.
So again, I wouldn't be able to get in there now.
Why do you say that?
Well, so they've just upgraded the film school. I'll say that. And then also too, the more I think about it, it's like filmmakers today are getting so much more creative, which I love and is amazing. But for me, it's like the school looks for directors. Like that's the type of students they were looking for. It's like same with like USC, which they were like, yeah, no. And I was like, okay, God, I'm not Spielberg. I understand that. But so with that, and don't get me wrong, so to be a producer, you have to be able to think creatively. And that's why I'm so happy I went to film school, did all that stuff. I will be honest though, I probably couldn't set this camera up right now, even though I was taught that. But it was something like, I knew I didn't want to be a cinematographer or a DP. And that's the nice part about film school though. In a broad sense, like, and it doesn't matter what program or what school you get into. If you go to any type of film program, they'll teach you all these things. But that's also where you learn there are so many aspects and so many things that go into one shoot. Like you have so many different crew members, so many different like ideas and things. And that's why I always kind of joke, like, especially in Hollywood, which we can get in my other career after this. But it's just like I'm amazed anything gets made because there's so much that goes into stuff. Yeah. With film school, they're looking for the next storytellers. Like, who are the storytellers out there? How can we help you tell your story? And the biggest thing I will say is when you go to film school, and I always joked I was kind of the worst film major ever, and I get there's a lot of self-deprecation going on here, but hear me out. So when I was in like my first class, everyone's like, oh, you haven't seen Citizen Kane, you haven't watched Casablanca. I never watched those old movies the greats. I never watched any of that stuff when I was growing up, and I'm glad I didn't. The more I think about it, because I have such a bigger appreciation for those movies as I see them as I'm older and like understand how they're filming.
What's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But at the time, when I realized is as I started getting better and like knowing like, okay, producing is what I want to do, I still think that film schools these days should look for people that have kind of that business mindset. And the thing is, producing, like no one's looking for a producer until they realize they really need one.
So true.
But it's like if you go to, I mean, I think more schools should do more like business school and film school collaborations for that very reason, because there's so many filmmakers that I know, like directors and writers, their brains just aren't wired to produce. Like I did a short film, which we can get into later. And my buddy who wrote it, he produced it. He goes, I never want to do this ever again. He goes, I just want to write. I hate this. He's like, this is horrible. He's like, thank God you were here, because it's a lot. I mean, you're in charge. You're running the ship. I mean, you know, if you kind of think about it, like a good analogy is like if you're watching football, and the Lions are still top of mind here, sadly, but
rest in peace.
Yeah, I know. But it's like, okay, if you look at it, like the producer's kind of like the GM. Your coach is the director, in my opinion, and then your kind of actors and like even like your first AD is kind of the quarterback. They're the ones getting things kind of moving along on set and kind of moving around. But yeah, the thing is though, if you're a filmmaker and you're in film school, find a friend that wants to produce and just stick with them forever. Right. Forever.
Right.
And make sure they're good at it too, though. Like make sure they're not like going over budget on everything you want to do. But like, you will be partnered with them forever. And so I'll go back to my last thing to tie this all in. My senior year, so when my producer was telling me not to keep doing her job, and don't get me wrong, she's awesome and she produces herself. She's fantastic. But there was this brand new building. It was the life sciences building on campus. It was like a new $15 million building or whatever. And they weren't letting any film students film there because fire hazards, they're still learning. It's all this like really cool tech stuff. And I still will say to this day, I'm the only one they've ever allowed to film there. But I was definitely, I'm sure people have maybe filmed since then, but I was definitely the first that they actually allowed me to film there. And
wow.
The short film it wasn't great by any means, but because at the end you kind of screen it for everybody. And my professor stood up, God bless the guy to this day. He goes, so I know this wasn't like a directorial achievement, but he goes, this is a producing masterclass. He goes, Max was able to convince the head of some department to let him film and bring 25 people in there and film this thing and do it the right way. And all went well.
Yeah.
And so he was like, that's something everyone here should take away from like this project.
That's such a great note. And I love what you hit on there of, the producing is such a overlooked art sometimes, where you're going to film school and artists are there, directors are artists, cinematographers are artists, right? But producing is an art too. And when you think about producing a short film, a commercial, a feature film, I can't even imagine. I've never done that. But those things, it's an orchestra. Right. And I love your analogy of GM, coach, players, right? Because that really does frame it up really nicely where you think about, the producer oftentimes is the person who falls on the sword, right? For problems, right? That thing when things go wrong. But the director has to steer the ship creatively. And when you say it's a tandem relationship, working with somebody that you jive well with from a producing standpoint is so important. So I love that you hit on that.
Super cool to hear. It sounded like you naturally fell into producing. Like you just kind of like started doing it. And I think like a lot of people don't realize like if in the realm of like demystifying this, like it takes a team to like do all of that stuff. And like, it's cool to like see all of that, see all of those pieces like come together. And like you were saying, like how valuable that is as like a producer to like steer the ship. You're pulling a lot of like pieces together to where it's like, oh, like the DP is the one that's like making that happen because they're holding the camera and pressing record, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people don't really realize is happening. And it was just cool to hear you naturally do something that you're gifted in and then discover what that is and like be a team player.
Quick note on that is what I did in college is like, I always made sure, and I guess this is just a good thing for any producer want it to be a producer. It's like, find the best person for every job. Like when I was in college, I was like, I know my directing skills, but it's like, I know the best writer for this. I know the best DP for this. I know the best AD for this. I know the best, like you got to know who the other players are on your team because again, you have to field that team. So it's like, if you know who's the best person or like if so-and-so doesn't work well with this person, maybe they're not the best fit for this one. It's little things like that of just knowing who is the best person for that role. For that specific project, like that is huge.
It's key. Yeah. I mean, putting people in a place where you're playing to their strengths, like you're playing to what they do well, and that results in like a good like end product. What's the thing that you love most about like producing, like personally? Is it that?
The thing I love most, so I can skip ahead a little bit if we want. So I produced a short film back in 2020. And the best thing I will say is when you're producing, at least there's different parts of it that are great. But when you're on set, we had this one day, it was our second day of filming, and everything just went like clockwork. And as you said, you alluded earlier, it's like an orchestra. And it literally was like perfect harmony. Everyone's in sync. It just went
flowing.
And then in true filmmaking fashion, in the afternoon, it all came crashing down.
Lunch will do that to you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It really will. It's just because like we were racing the sun that day because it was like it was all day shoot. We only had 2 days total, and this was our last day, and so it got a little crazy. But then that's the other thing too. When I say like you got to get the right team, I mean it got to the point where I was like getting tight. Like I had never met and worked with a lot of these people before, besides my one buddy. But our DP, his name's Rob Benavides. He's the man. We can talk about him later. He's freaking awesome. him and then our AD and our director were getting into it, or him and the director were and they knew each other. They were getting into it a little bit. Like they couldn't figure out how they wanted to do this little bit. And I could see the tensions like before they boiled, but I could see them like starting to get a little bit higher. And so I grabbed the AD. I was like, grab them right now. And I literally pulled everyone aside for 10 minutes. I go, we're talking about this right now. And they were able to like, it de-escalated everything. And then it was like, boom, we got it done after that. But as a producer, and again, this is also having a good first AD because he was like, thank you for doing that. I saw it too. I wasn't sure what you wanted to do. But like to recognize when, okay, something's off here. Sometimes you got to pause, step back, and like reassess because if you don't, and you just keep going that way, it's gonna be it's gonna be a nightmare, and you could lose potential shots that you could be getting that you need.
How much of that is like your intuition, your feeling, like
reading people? Like,
it's a lot of reading people. You got to know if there's tension in the room, like you got to be able to pick up on that, or if like something seems off, or someone's not in a great mood. It's like, and again, just looking at facial expressions, just listening to how people talk to you. Like, do they seem not themselves? Are they quiet? Are they like just seem off? And if you can recognize that and kind of get them to talk a little bit, whether it's just like something going on wherever, and then that can apply to the office too,
right?
Like that can apply anywhere, not just on a film set.
That's like tactical empathy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially in our world, you got to have a lot of that, in my opinion, because if you're just kind of restrained and focused on yourself, which I mean, for some people, it's probably good that they do that for their roles so that they don't get distracted. But like as a producer, you really got to know what's going on at all times.
So what made you go from, that internal agency, talent agency, management, and then, you're speaking directly to tactical empathy, what it takes to be a producer, assembling the right team. Like, how did you go from that management, which sounds fascinating, in the sense of like helping people be successful? Maybe that's it.
That really is. That's and I know you wanted to. I can circle back here and talk about more Hollywood too if we want. But yeah, so because I learned a lot of it from that. I mean, so as I said, it's like one of my bosses she was not Ari Gold. I'll just say this. It's not that bad. Entourage overplays everything. So for anyone wondering, like, yes, it's all overplayed. It's all Hollywoodized, as I call it. But she was very, we'll call it strict and very intense and very whatever. And so you have to learn how to calm yourself down because if you're not, so when you're an assistant to an agent or a manager or producer or whatever, you are their kind of lifeline at times because your job is to make sure they don't have to worry about the little things, that sending certain emails, setting their meetings, doing their schedule, making sure what they have for lunch. And it's grunt work. There's no denying that. But you learn so much attention to detail. You learn how to be thinking 2 steps ahead. You learn how to be calm when, to put it frankly, shit hits the fan. And I learned all of that in that 5 years being an assistant. It's like Hollywood grad school, but it's also just film grad school, in my opinion, because you learn to keep a cool head when, again, shit hits the fan, because it always does. And so that's where I really learned a lot of those types of skills and just know, okay, like someone's on, like if my boss is on edge, then what can I do to help that? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, because their job is to do the best job for their clients. And if they're off, then they can't service their clients well. So then your job as an assistant, for any assistants listening to this, because hopefully there are some, like just do your best every day. You're not going to have a great day. Like I made so many mistakes. Like I thought I was getting fired many, many days. There's also a reason I left. It's a very stressful job. But I think everyone should be an assistant for somebody for at least 1 year, like, and do it early. Like right when you graduate school or right when you do that, like, because you learn so many valuable skills of just it working in general. Like even my current boss, she's like, nothing gets past you. And I'm like, I got 5 different agents to thank for that throughout my years there, even ones that I didn't work for. Yeah. So yeah.
That's really cool. So you basically cut your teeth in this talent agency in Hollywood. We don't have to name any names, but I'm assuming it's a big one, right?
Yeah, it was one of the big ones. Yeah.
So you work there, and then you go to this management company, which maybe you could tell, like, what's the difference between the talent agency and a management company, like specifically? I know you mentioned that.
Yeah, so strictly speaking, a talent agent's job is to get you a job. That is their main purpose and role, is to be connected with studio executives, network executives, producers, everybody, to get their clients jobs and service the agency. On the management side, it's more personal. You are with them on the day-to-day stuff. You're helping them. Okay, how do you want to shape your career? And at the same time, too, managers at the time technically weren't supposed to be getting jobs, but if there are connections there and a job is brought to the manager, then they can provide the job for their clients. At the same time, too, a lot of managers also produce. Like they will produce a lot of their clients' stuff. One of my bosses, when I was a management company, he produced a film with 3 of his clients. Actually, one was an actress in it, and then one directed it, and then the other was the writer of it.
Wow!
And so he helped produce it and get the financing and all that stuff for it. So as an agent, you're not allowed to produce. So that's another reason why I switched to management, because I knew production was something of where I wanted to go. So I wanted to learn more of that. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way because it was more client focused. Which, as I learned, I didn't want to do that. It wasn't kind of my calling, and it was horrible. I felt so bad telling my clients that I was leaving to go to advertising. They were like, "What?" Yeah. But luckily, they were understanding, and they're all good people. Like,
so
that's the thing. Yeah.
Quick question: are like a lot of managers also PGA producers?
Some of them, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
So you're getting scripts for your clients, right? And you're reading through them. Do you feel like you got a better understanding for filmmaking after you were getting so many of these scripts?
God, absolutely.
Like, what was that like?
Absolutely. So you learn what you don't like. But then the big thing is like when you read something and you think it's good, and then you see the movie and you're like, oh, that didn't work, or oh, whoa, like that was awesome type of thing. I'm trying to think of one example. Like, what's a good example? So Yellowstone obviously is one. That was a TV spec pilot, or it wasn't spec, but it was a pilot I read, and I was like, okay, that's really good.
So you read this. So Taylor Sheridan, is putting the script out there. Your agency gets it. You get the script. You're in charge of reading that for your boss. You read it, and you're just like, whoa. What made you say that this is good, right? Because you were just reading the words on paper, right? And you're creatively thinking it from a producing standpoint. I'm sure, you can't help yourself, right? What jumped out to you about that series?
Just the writing. I mean, he's a badass writer. Like he just makes everything sound so cool, and like he just paints the world so well. And you can just see like the opening scene. For those who've seen Yellowstone, it's like the opening scene is like Kevin Costner's been in a car wreck and he has to shoot this horse. I mean, that's the first thing you read, and like the first 2 pages is, boom, he shoots the horse in the head. You're like, whoa, wait, what? Like, okay, this is like, we're diving in. Here we go. Like this is, and then just the characters are like Rip and Beth and all those guys. Like they just, like Beth, I remember that character just jumps off the page at you because you're just like, well, if you've seen the first scene with her, you'll know why. You're just like, whoa, this is nuts. And then there's stuff like you can tell the difference too between like a Yellowstone type pilot and then something that's on like the CW.
Okay.
It's just they read differently, and they're broken up differently too. Because like think with that, like they still are kind of like some of them will be like the page will end short where like a commercial break would happen, and like where the scene kind of ends, and like they leave that little cliffhanger until you go to the next page type of thing. But whereas some of the that's more networky. But then when you go to like feature scripts, this is really gonna bug me because I've read so many, and I'm just like trying to think of one that comes to mind. No, I can't talk about that one because it would kind of reveal. It would kind of reveal just like who I've worked with. And I don't want to like.
Yeah,
do
I know
like that.
Well, we don't want to put you on the spot either for that. I think
I can talk about that off camera.
Yeah, yeah. The thing of value I see, from what you're sharing is like your script reading and this position really informed some of your creative like tendencies, what you wanted to chase after, and probably, I'm guessing, informed the short film that you ended up 100%. Making, right? And 100%. So, catch us up to speed here. We'll circle back to post-COVID, right? So you jumped into agency producing after leaving the management company. What was the transition from Hollywood to commercial advertising like?
At the time, I'll say it was a bit of breath of fresh air. Because it was more what I wanted to be doing. And that was getting on set and working on projects daily, which just, for me, was awesome. Because it's like, when you're at an agency, to go back to Hollywood for 2 seconds, Hollywood's the slowest moving industry on the planet. It's like turning a cruise ship. Whereas, like, I'm serious. Like, it can take a year for something to even get potentially bought. Before it can take over a year before you even maybe shoot anything, if not even longer, and that's a whole other beast to go into. But with this, it's like I think my first project was a small thing that I did, and it was like, okay, 8 weeks and we're done. And I was like, this is great. Like, it was something I could like see as it was progressing and have like step by step by step, like you could just seeing that progress from beginning to end and not being like, oh, this is going to take forever. I was like, oh, I'm done in 8 weeks. Like, on to the next thing. Like, this is great. Like, I really enjoyed like being able to do more than one thing at once, and also, but also seeing it progress and actually wrap up and say, okay, what's next? You know, as opposed to like being stuck on one thing for so long.
You know, for me, why I never really became enchanted with the Hollywood lifestyle was just because I had always seen just the amount of creative time and energy you could put into something for it to potentially become nothing, right? Like you're writing scripts, you're doing all this, and it could potentially be total waste, right? Whereas in commercial filmmaking, there's a lot higher chance of you actually doing the work, right? And you know, I know that people would argue about like the highest level of commercial filmmaking, which is extremely competitive and it's very hard to get done. But from a content perspective, like if you're truly coming from telling a story, there's a lot of opportunities to do that in the commercial space, right?
And do it creatively, in new ways, like present new ideas and opportunities to clients. That was just like, I just want a cut and dry thing. And then you have a chance to elevate it and like make it good and speak to people.
Yeah, 100%. And so what I love about, you know, what you're telling us is that huge difference. You kind of got your experience in it, but you're telling people, hey, here's two different paths, right? Here's a path in the Hollywood route, and here's a path in the commercial, you know, filmmaking route. And so if you want to pick up on where you were telling us about, you know, what you liked from a producing standpoint in commercial filmmaking and being on set, where are you at now?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I would say, and because I did obviously had a lot of people ask me like, okay, why are you going to advertising? It's like, look, I want to be a producer. And the best way to describe it, and what I tell most people is like, I'm getting my reps in at this point. Like, if you want to get on set, go work in commercial advertising. You'll be on set way more than you ever will in Hollywood. Like, if you want to be a producer, like if you're a PA, that's a different story because like obviously you can get on different jobs and whatnot. But there are so many more commercial projects happening, I feel like, at a time, because again, they take less time. So there's more of them.
More
Whereas
turnover.
movie, there's more turnover, where it's like you get one movie or a TV show, like great, you're on that for X amount of time, but then you got to go find your next one. So here it's like, and a lot of these people, they'll turn over and they'll know who's good in terms of PAs and whatever. But that's what I'd say. Like for me right now, I mean, I've been on set more in the last 2 years than I was the last 5 years when I was there. I wasn't on set once, actually. Like, and so that's what I wanted to do. And then so when I went and did my own short film, that's when I was like, I caught the bug again. I was like, this is where I want to be.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So going back into COVID a little bit, or actually pre-COVID. So one of my best friends, he was a writer at film school, and he sent me this short story that he wrote back in like 2019. And he's like, hey, could we do this as like a short film? And I read the short story. I was like, this is awesome. Like, absolutely. Fast forward 6 months of him and I like pounding our heads, trying to, because I helped him a lot. And this is another thing you have to do as a producer. Like, you have a say in how the script goes and how the story goes. And it's like, because sometimes writers will be thinking from a literary standpoint, so to speak, whereas you got to come in and be like, okay, how can we visually do this? Like, how can we actually take the words that you've written on this page and make it so that it can be translated onto film? And this is before we even have a director at this point. It's just him and me.
You're just talking about like, is this even feasible? You want a hurricane? How are we going to create a hurricane?
Exactly. You know, yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example. It's like, okay, the thing I always say in film school, no kids, no animals.
Right.
Right. And so I told him too, because with the kids, it was kids in the thing, they were like 10 for a while. And then eventually I was like, can you just age them up? And sure. And so we got like some 19-year-old guys that look like they're 15.
Right.
You know, and that's just
a little bit more maturity.
Just a little, yeah.
Casting.
Exactly. Casting, right. Yeah, all that stuff. And so we do all this. We have a director on who's one of his buddies, and we were doing all this stuff, all this writing. COVID shut everything down. Lost our director, but that actually worked in our favor. We got the best director for it ever afterwards. His name's Sam. He's still a good buddy today. And so from there, we're like, okay, this is now fast forward late summer 2020. We have our director, we have our team. We're like, all right, now we gotta do the thing. So we, like goofballs, went out into the woods of where we like what we wanted to film and kind of the feeling of it, and we shot us just being dorks asking for money, pretty much. Like we made this entertaining GoFundMe, or it was Indiegogo was what we used, video of like, okay, and like we literally held a sign up that said, "Warning, we're about to ask you for money." Like I'm not kidding. Like I'm not kidding. Like we actually held that up.
Okay,
like the first thing you see is that. Like, and so just because they're like, oh, look, how you got to do it? Like, you got to catch people's attention, and it worked. Like, and then we had a little thing of like what it would kind of feel like in terms of the film and whatnot. And so we all spoke to camera and did that stuff. And then we ended up raising through a lot of random people, a lot of generous people that are like, we're tight with, family, friends, and then strangers that we didn't really know that got shared out to. We raised like over $20,000 for this thing.
Wow.
And all within like a month.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. And I will say, like, if anyone wants to do that, like really think hard and like go through everything you would want to show somebody for doing, like it took us 2 weeks to get this campaign up even. Like we fleshed everything out. We had storyboard pictures on there. We had like every little thing, like here's where your money's going. It's going to go to this. We broke the budget down. Like we did all of that stuff to show like, this is where it's going to, and it worked. So I would say if you're doing any type of campaign fundraising or fundraising for a film or anything, really go in depth and like really kind of walk people along. Like here's where your money's going to go to and all of that. So then we got everybody. So we got our DP from our director. His name's Rob Benavides. I think I mentioned. He's awesome. He was kind of like, we kind of call him like the uncle on set, because he just is this guy who's had so much experience, and he's just a total homie. And so we got him, which was awesome. And then we just kind of started to find the right cast people. And my other buddy was our casting director, and he found just this awesome group of talent. And one of them ended up getting signed at my old company because of the short film. Yeah.
So were you the one who was in charge of, producing, assembling all of this? You brought in all your buddies.
Yep. Everybody.
Tell me about that process.
Yeah.
What that was like.
So really it was just, 3 of us that we started off as like knowing each other before. It was really just that. So one, was my best friend, Jack, who was a writer and who's the one who came up with the idea. Then David, my other buddy, we brought him on kind of late because it was one of those like he was a screenwriter too, but he's a really good salesman. I'll say that. So we brought him in for some stuff, but he used to act when he was younger. So I was like, dude, you'd be perfect for casting. Because truth, I'll be honest, I don't like the casting process. I know that's like a horrible thing, but I hate sitting down. I think maybe that's from seeing it too much in my talent agency days. No. I'm like, I can't watch another self-tape or I'm going to lose my mind. So he was like, dude, I'll do it. And I was like, please, like, oh my God, please. And God bless him, because I mean, he went through like 700-800 submissions.
Wow. I
mean, and this was just for a short film. Like imagine like a true movie or TV show. Like granted, that's why you have good casting directors.
Wow.
But yeah, so that happened. And then we met our director, Sam, through literally Jack's, the writer, his like girlfriend's friend's cousin. I'm not kidding. It was like the craziest connection.
Wow.
And we saw stuff, and he was totally like the right guy for the story. And we hit it off after that. And then he brought on Rob. And then I had another producing friend of mine, the one from college. She recommended 2 people to me for ADs. So we got that. And then Rob, our DP, had his couple of guys come in for grip and all that stuff. And so it's like, I met with people as I was kind of introduced to them, but it's like I will say at times it's like for this one, I didn't obviously have the full say in who we were fully hiring, because it's like, we just got to do it.
You got to do it. You're working off this limited budget,
limited budget. And so that's the other thing. We had to find people that was a non-union thing. So it's like, we got to find people that will work for this.
Right.
It wasn't much.
Good on you for paying them though.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. We made sure, again, it was not much, but it was, we made sure everyone got something at least. Yeah. I think except the PAs, but actually we got them a case of beer. They were fine.
Tell me about
and that was actually my brother's buddy who was at LMU at the time, and he knew I was doing this. So.
Hey, they got real practical experience.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, it was so fun. I remember we were shooting in Malibu one day, but we had gotten food from this one place that was downtown LA. This poor kid had to drive like an hour and a half to get it and come back. And there was a reason why we did it, which I can get into later. But like, he's just like, oh, geez. I'm like, yeah, sorry, man, but appreciate it.
Why did you do it? So this was lunch on one of the production days, is what you're saying?
Yeah, on one of the production days. It was a donation type of thing.
Okay.
So it's like we kind of got it for free.
So you organized the lunch for free, basically.
Yeah.
You produced that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the little things that people don't talk about, right? Is every part of producing, whether it's big or small, there's big things that you produce, right? Like a location, you're shooting in Malibu, or there's a little thing that you produce, like getting a free lunch, right? And those things are insanely difficult to quantify and also talk about, because from a producing standpoint, it often gets overlooked. Like obviously we have producers that we work with too, and we love them for various reasons. Some of them, it's because they know how to carve out more margin, right, on a budget. Some of them, it's because they just know the taste of food that this, you know, particular project requires, right? I think those are the nuances that it's easy for us to just, you know, talk shop about that. But if you're up and coming and you want to really learn about producing, like all of those things really matter. All of those little details really matter.
Absolutely. You know? I mean, it literally just came from like, it was like a call out in the credits, and they're like, yeah, if you just like post about us or whatever, we'll just, here's your food. Like, and that saves you $300-400
for sure. And so,
and that can go a long way.
How many days did you shoot for?
2 days.
You only shot for 2
days.
days.
It should have been a 3-day shoot, but we only had 2 days.
And how long is the film?
13 and a half minutes.
Wow. That is a lot of footage to shoot in 2 days.
2 days.
Tell us about like the wrap and now getting into post and obviously name of the film, so we can plug that, get people to watch it.
Yeah, sure. So the film is called Sheep Hills. As my buddy kind of calls it, it's like a cautionary tale that could have happened in his life. So Sheep Hills is an actual like state park in Orange County. And so what the story's about is these two young men, we'll call it, they're teenagers, who have really troubled home lives. And so their escape is this state park, Sheep Hills. However, one day, one of the boys gets his hand on his brother's gun and shit goes down. And it's a really big kind of cautionary tale on like toxic masculinity and gun violence and like all that stuff. So, so it's a bit of a downer at times, but people love it. And I can get into that right now. So getting into post, this is another good buddy of mine from college. He was the editor I had kind of mentioned earlier, Nick. He's the man. It took about a year to cut. And I know it's only 13 episodes, but between his work and our work and us not being in the same place, like, because it's one of those, after you film something, whether it's a commercial shoot or a film or whatever, you get into the first cut and you're like, oh my God, what have we done? Like, what did we shoot? Like, what happened? And
did we get enough?
Did we get enough?
Did we shoot the script? Did we do this right? Is the story even good?
Exactly. Like the first cut, I think it's Scorsese or someone says, like, if you don't hate your first cut, you didn't do it right. Like sort of thing. Like, you should not love your first, you should hate your first cut. And we did. We were like, oh dear God. Like, it was great seeing it, but we're just like, oh man, did we get enough coverage? So we did have to do a mini kind of pickup day. And if you look closely, you can see a couple of the shots that are like fully matched, but are just enough and quick enough.
Same crew?
Like, pretty close.
No, it was like a skeleton crew. It was our DP, our director, and the two actors, honestly. Like, I didn't even make it out there for that. Like, it was one of those, like, they just went, they knew what they had to get, and they just went and did it.
Needed the pickup.
Exactly. And so that was, I didn't even know if I was in town when they did it, but it was just one of those we had to get. So we're in post for a while. We finally get it done. And the other thing I'll say is make sure you save a little more money for post. Even like if you think you have your idea, just save a little bit more, because it's like, it's colored great. The sound is very good, but it's like, that's where I wish I had another $1,000 for. You know what I mean? Yeah,
right there.
honestly, like you always want more money for post. And I said, it's beaten to death, but it's true. Like you don't realize it until it's gone. And it's like, when again, we had money still, but it just wasn't enough to get it over. Like, again, don't get me wrong, I'm so happy and proud of where it came out to, but it's like, there's always those little things. And
totally.
Everyone, you watch it, and the director, the writer, we all have the same thing. It's like, oh, these couple little things, like, God, if we could just tweak this or do that. But anyway, hindsight's always 20/20. But in success, we got into a couple of festivals. So the first one we got in a couple of just online ones. And then we got into, I think it was called Hollywood Shorts Fest, if I recall. And that was it was cool. It was at like Raleigh Studios, which is just right across the street from Paramount, which is cool, out in LA. And they had a whole screening. They did a Q&A with us, which we had a blast at. And then the programmer came up to me afterward, and he was like, I love your film. Like, I want you to submit to my other festival in Cannes. And I was like, truthfully, I kind of thought he was just kind of blowing smoke up her tail. Like, okay, like, dude, like, thank you. This is amazing. But I was like, okay, sure. Like, happy to submit. And a couple months go by, and it's like, I remember it was like a random Tuesday, and I think I'm like on a call, like with my boss or whatever, like on Teams, which I know you guys don't use, but on another Teams meeting. And I get this email. It's just like, hey, we need your files for the Cannes Indie Shorts Fest. And like, no, congratulations, you're in. Just like, hey, we need your files for the live screening in October. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, did we actually? So I'm like, hi, like, did we get? It's like, oh yeah, you're in. Like, we need your files in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is sweet. So I call my buddy and I'm like, dude, you're not gonna believe, like, we got in a festival in Cannes. He's like, shut up. I'm like, no, I'm serious. So I forward him the email and we lose our mind. And so obviously we had to go. Unfortunately, we all couldn't go. So it ended up just being the director and myself that went out. We got this little Airbnb in Cannes, and it's just, I mean, it's incredible. Everyone who works, whether it be in advertising or film or anything, should find a way to go at some point. I know that's a huge thing to like say, but it just has a cute little aura to it. Like, just like so much film history has kind of come through this and all that stuff. And it's like, you see here about the yachts and the beach and like all this stuff. And it's just cool to be there. And it's tiny. I mean, it's a tiny little town just right on the Mediterranean. And we had a blast. It was like a filmmaker summer camp.
This is like a full circle moment because you worked at the talent agency, management, commercial, also filmmaker, going to Cannes, and that is like an Entourage story right there. You know, like if you have seen Entourage on HBO, that is literally an episode right there. It's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, no, it was surreal because it's like you hear about it, you see, like, just especially if you love films, and then when you finally get there, you're like, okay, this is really freaking cool. And then at the same time, met like some amazing filmmakers from like Canada and Germany and Netherlands, like just everywhere. Wow. They were all there. In Brazil, like everyone was there, and you just got to watch all these. And it was only short films, which was the awesome part too. Cool. And so it's like you could watch 10 plus a day, and like you could figure out like which block you wanted to go to, and everyone kind of became friends, and we all like were out till 2 a.m. just hanging out. Like it was a full on like filmmaker summer camp from around the world, and it was us, and then I think maybe one other American. Like it was like it was amazing, and I was like the talent, like the films coming out of Germany are excellent, by the way. Just for reference, like,
have you seen All Quiet on the Western Front?
I have.
Okay, so that's
my god.
Have you watched that, Cole?
Oh yeah,
What did you think about it?
I loved it. It was like so immersive, like just how they got into the grit and like the detail of that, the sound design. You know, you know what scene I'm talking about. Like,
oh my gosh, that was hard to watch.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Why do you say the film's out of Germany?
I don't know. Just every German filmmaker was like, I was just like blown away. Yeah. At every single one that we saw. Like they were all excellent. It's just like, wow, okay. And I don't know, they were all in I cannot remember the name. It's a film school out there, but I can't remember the name of it, but they were all, or a lot of them were from that school. And I'm like, okay, there's something there.
Has it always been like that? Or do you feel like it's like recent that there are some like more recent pockets of international filmmakers that are really, really good?
I think it's more recent probably because it's like obviously now you're seeing like everything coming out of like South Korea and whatnot. Yeah. Like I haven't seen, what is it, Godzilla?
-1.
-1. Yeah. I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it's excellent. I've heard it's so good. But then like, that all kind of kicked off like with Parasite, 4 years ago? And then you got Squid Game, and it's just like there's different pockets, not even just Europe, just over the world. And it's kind of cool to see like, okay, where's the next like awesome filmmaker coming from? You know, because like for a while they had like the French New Wave and all that stuff, and it's like I haven't seen any. No offense to the French people, I haven't seen any great French movies lately or anything. But like, but it's just it's cool to see like, okay, where's stuff coming from? Which was really, really like eye opening when we were out there. So yeah,
cool. What just like on the idea of making your own film, how was that process? Was it intimidating finding an audience? Like, who did you think was going to like resonate with that or like connect with that message? Like, especially from agency stuff to now something that's way more freewheel. Yeah. Like, what was that process like? Yeah,
so we had a lot of conversations about this, and it's not like we got like hundreds of thousands of views or anything like that. And it's still like, it's out there, it's growing, it's there to grow. But what we really kind of thought about was, we really kind of looked at ourselves a little bit, like, okay, like as young men, like what's kind of out there these days? And not to rip on Hollywood, even though I was there for so long, it's like a lot of it's watered down these days. And it's a lot of it's kind of this and that, where ours was gritty. Raw. Like it was pretty like, yeah, shit's going to go down, get along for the ride, but it's real. You know, it's like this could happen. You know, as my buddy says, it's a cautionary tale that could have happened to me. And that's kind of the point. Like, and at the same time though, the biggest thing we tried to, the hardest part in the writing, and this is so much credit to Jack and how he wrote this thing, is we always said like, we didn't want it to come off of like, you know, how like you're in school and they show you like the anti-bullying or like like we didn't want it to come off like kind of a PSA piece. Like we wanted to make sure it came off as like a narrative piece. And it's a very fine line with that, without dialogue sounding too cheesy or too corny, or like some action being just like so scripted and staged. And it came from the writing that it was, I mean, literally, I think even till like the day before we shot like one of these scenes, like he was still reworking some of the words and some of this, like once he could see how the blocking was going to start playing out. And that really goes into like thinking about your audience, because if you are just putting out there, it's like a PSA shooter or bully film, whatever you want to call it, like you'll lose your audience pretty quick. Cause like I saw this when I was in 6th grade at whatever school, you know, like on an anti-national bullying day or whatnot, something like that. Not to discredit that by any means. But it's like, you really have to think like, okay, how do you want this to come out? And how is someone who's viewing it supposed to feel? And what are they supposed to be going through? Like what, like should there, like, yeah, if you're making like a horror film, I'd hope you want people to be scared, but also not just like cheaply moving them along with cheap scares and cheap jump scares. Like those are fun every now and then if it's meant to be that. But like, know the story you want to tell, but yeah, at the same time, never forget your audience, because if you love it, but no one else cares to watch it, it's not going to do anything for you. You know, it's like, you really got to think like, okay, who's the audience for this? And like, yeah, we had people read it like beforehand, and everyone keeps everything close to the vet. Like they can't read my screenplay. It's like, it's a prize. It's like, no, to be blunt, Spielberg's not going to come and buy it off you down on the street. It doesn't happen like that. Like, share it, get the feedback, get criticism, get constructive criticism. If someone just tells you it sucks, they're not a good person to be giving you advice or feedback. But if they're like, hey, I want you to rethink your second act because this character is not developed enough here, think about it. Okay, if someone's noticing that, someone else is probably going to notice that too. So pause, think on any type of feedback you get when you're writing, in your edits. I mean, heck, I sent the cut to so many people, and it's tough because it's like they know about it and you don't want them to see it because like you want them to see it when it's done. And I totally understand that, like but it's like, hey, I have certain people that I trust their feedback on. Find that inner circle and send it to everything. And as long as they're willing, obviously, but also do the same for them. Like that's where, again, that's another good thing about film school is like you meet, again, like-minded filmmakers from all shapes and sizes of the world and with different ideas. Like, again, some people love horror, some people love comedy. I mean, look at Jordan Peele. They do go together in a sense. Like if you can do one, you can do the other. And also if you have any friends, like people listening to this that are comedy writers, just stick close with them if you want to work on your writing, because comedy writing is so freaking hard. Right. It is like the hardest thing in the world.
What I love about what you're saying is, you know, there's reciprocity in filmmaking. And when you think about, you know, how you're going to get things done, how you're going to work with people and being able to openly put yourself out there is you have to put your creative energy into those things, but then you have to release that into the world. And you have to let people really give you real feedback. And that takes a lot of vulnerability, right? It takes a lot of awareness in yourself of like, okay, there are some people that are going to give me really valuable feedback, and there are going to be some people who don't give me valuable feedback. And if you can be vulnerable, then you can also reciprocate because they can come to you and ask you for your feedback too, right? And that creates a friendship. It creates a relationship. And that's why I love filmmaking. I think there are filmmakers out there who do that open their hearts and are vulnerable to their creativity and their work. And that allows growth, not only on your personal side, but on that friendship and that relationship too. And I love hearing that because I think that's a really good message for filmmakers coming up, is to not guard your creativity. So, you know, build a wall around yourself. Because I think a lot of people get scared that somebody's going to take my idea, or, you know, you hear it so often. I just had a call about this, is they're getting producers and directors, you know, saying, hey, sign your life story away to me and for the next 6 years, right? Yeah. I get there's a place for that. I get, you know, there's a lot of competition for your Netflix biography or whatever, right? Yeah. But why would you do that? You know, why would you do that and shut yourself off to any of those opportunities? Because even production companies, right, where they guard their IP so heavily that they don't welcome any other production company to collaborate. I really think there's a space for that where, you know, we would partner with another production company if the story presented itself and it was the right fit, right? We don't need to build that wall because I think we can bring them in, or we can go to somebody else and provide value.
Totally.
So I love hearing that, Max.
Yeah. No, and one last thing, because I know this has really just been a producing heavy episode here. So just as I was kind of saying, it's like the vulnerability. So as a producer, you will honestly 9.9 times out of 10, you're the first person giving feedback to your writer, to your director, to your whomever. So know that going in, like, don't bluntly tear something apart to tear it apart. Like, make sure you can constructively work on this. Because, like, again, everyone's end goal is to make the best possible thing, whether that's a commercial, whether that's a movie, whether that's a short film, whether it's a TV show, whether it's whatever. Make sure you are there to provide truly constructive feedback, not just, this sucks, or change that. Like, you're the first line of defense, or the first person that your people are going to come to. So as long as you have that relationship and are knowledgeable and can provide great feedback to excel and build on the project, that is invaluable. Like, that is one of the first things you should learn to do as a producer, is give great constructive feedback.
I think there's also like a piece there of like putting your identity like in your work and like separating that. Like, that's been a lot of conversations, even personally speaking, like here in this space, like in the office, of like, don't do that. Like, separate that. Like, when you have feedback, don't internalize it. It's not an attack on you.
Yep.
So like, even feedback on your own film,
Totally.
like, you have to learn how to do that. And that's a muscle that you like build up and like exercise. So figuring out a way to do that repeatedly and have feedback, or even like if you're bringing feedback to a director or someone who's writing, like, I'm not crapping on this. Like, I'm looking at this with optimism of like, how do we move this forward to the next step?
Totally.
You kind of have to have like thick skin, right?
You really do. And that's a great way of putting it, Cole. Just like, I'm not attacking you. It's like, look, there's a problem here that we can make better, and I'm here to help you make that better.
And it's like you get more minds on a project, and that will make it better, like inherently. Like, it can't be all like one. Again, like, it takes a team. Like, that's what I was kind of getting at earlier. It's like, to move these things along on a much bigger scale, it's not freelancing. It's not like this small little thing. Like, you need all these people. You need casting directors, like all of these things, and like working together collectively for the greater good of the project. That's something that we just recently talked about too. Like, it's not you and run the show and your ego. Like, that's the thing, right? It's like, it comes back to that. I want this. I want my name on it. I want to get out there. Like, surrendering to that and being humble and just being a team player is like what's needed.
First billing isn't everything. Honestly.
I love that. You know, people want their name on the credits, right? And so badly, I think as young filmmakers, you really want to be the director, right? Or be the whatever,
the
right?
guy.
The person, right? And if you are not that, it doesn't make you anything less valuable to the project.
Exactly.
Right? You say first billing, right? I don't know if a lot of this audience will know what that means, but if you think about this on a movie poster, right? There's a list of names that are on the movie poster, and that's typically your first billing. And those people are like your director, your executive producers, your DP potentially, you know, maybe sometimes not, but those are all important positions. However, they're not everyone who makes up the whole team.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, if you go like the length of credits, it's like this long or this many people, and then you have this many people that come scrolling after that. You know?
Right.
It's like there's a lot of hands that go into anything that's ever been made. I mean, even just watch a TV show at the end of it. Yeah. Like, you get a couple, I mean, granted, no one watches the credits because Netflix or Apple, they skip right by them immediately. But if you pause or just like accidentally forget to change it, like, just take a look. I mean, hundreds.
This goes back to your analogy, right? GM, director, players. It's a team sport.
Yeah,
it's a total team
absolutely
sport.
is.
I love that your carryover from Hollywood to commercial filmmaking in the advertising space just makes you more aware, more vulnerable, more present, able to provide feedback, and taught you how to work in this space. I think what would be really valuable, not only from us, from a vendor side of things, right? Looking at you as an agency producer, but also sharing this with filmmakers is like, what would make you, what makes you choose production companies? Like, what do you look for when you're looking for people to work with? I think that's a super valuable thing to
That's
answer.
a good question. So there's a combination of things, and I'll talk on the advertising side first. So you have your clients that they are pitched an idea by our creative team, or they have a need, and whatever that creative is really going to dictate. So in terms of production companies, like I obviously always have the number of production companies in my head that it's like, again, I've worked with them in the past or I've heard about them before, but for certain projects, I'll usually go director first. And so with that, at least in advertising, sometimes I might not know who their production company is, but the creative team and the account team and everybody is like, we love this director and whatnot. And obviously I'll get to know the production company as we kind of start any bid process or whatever process we have to go through to get the project to be made. But a lot of it starts more with the director. So it's like, okay, if we're looking for something to do with, again, so for example, outdoors or whatnot, it's like, okay, who are some great we'll start looking, okay, what are some great outdoor spots that have just come out in the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years even? Like, okay, who's doing that? Okay, find who the director is, find who the production company is, start getting in touch with them that way. So that's one part of it. If it's something that's like not so specific or not, you kind of have the people that you work well with. And it's like, who can fit that ask, so to speak. It's like, and not to pocket people, so to different productions, it's like, who does great work with certain things.
What I'm hearing, and it sounds like it's more of a problem-solving thing in that case, right?
Yeah.
You want to work with people who know how to solve problems,
Yes.
who provide solutions. Like it's that classic age-old, like, you want to work with people you like.
Yeah,
right?
No, it's true.
A
It really is.
relationship.
It's a
Yeah.
relationship. If we're really demystifying production, if we're really, showing people how things get made, there's a value to understanding the commercial space. And if you're saying like leading with creative a lot, that's really what matters. I think it would encourage, our filmmaker audience or even our, marketing audience to understand that like there's a ton of resources out there to get looks, to get an understanding of what is trending, what is good out there. Cole and I were just talking about, have you seen the movie The Creator?
No,
It's the new John David Washington.
Oh yeah,
right?
was it? Wait, isn't like the sci-fi one?
Yeah, it's
I
like
haven't
AI.
seen. Yeah.
So
I haven't seen it
Cole
yet.
and I were having a chat, and we love this movie from a cinematography standpoint.
Ooh,
Maybe
okay,
not necessarily from a story standpoint, but shot on prosumer cameras. Very small crew, like grip truck. Some
Just
aperture
couple
lighting.
of lights.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
and
that's
lots of VFX, obviously. So
Yeah.
like on the day, sending stuff to ILM and doing things like that. But we look at that as a trend of like, wow, people are going more to this nimble, small production approach, right? Because the capabilities of these cameras are so
insane.
good.
That's what I was going to say is you're seeing that swing. And I think that's why film school has gotten maybe harder in a sense, because people are coming in with YouTube University of like learning all of this
100%.
stuff. And it's like, you're constantly pushing that boundary. But yeah, like camera tech is
It's insane.
swung so far.
yeah.
How often do you look for just production companies like that who can be fast moving, nimble, that sort of thing?
All
How
the
important
time.
is that to you?
Well, I'll say this. I mean, just in the general marketplace of everything, it's like people want that. It's like most stuff's going online nowadays. It's not going on the big commercial. Not everyone's doing a Super Bowl spot. You know what I mean? It's like they're looking for quick social, what's going to engage an audience the fastest and keep their attention type of thing. And so to do that, you don't need a 200-person crew to shoot one thing. It's like you really, again, you could have 4 people, you could have 3 people. It's like being nimble is a huge thing. The other thing too is like cost as well. It's a lot cheaper to do that too, which at the end, again, not that money's everything, but it's a huge factor. And then I'll say this again, as a producer at an agency, it's like so obviously first job is to the clients and make sure they get exactly what they want and that I can find the right people to do that. But really, I service more our creative team and our creatives. Like they're the ones that had the vision, and that vision has been signed off by clients. It's my job to service them to get that vision to life and find the best partner to do that. Whatever that may be, big, small, medium, like it doesn't matter. Like my job is to find the best partner for my creative team and myself to deliver the best content for the clients, if that makes sense. And that's something I was taught early days on. I was taught that early days by my boss, who's awesome. And so that is what I try to do. And obviously it's like, look, just because we have a vendor, I can't just neglect the vendor. Like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes there's some crazy ass we have to come to you guys for.
Yeah.
And I am totally aware of that. And it's like, I'll usually start the call of, hey, don't hate me or something. But like, here's what I'm getting. Yeah. Let me get ahead of this before I ask you these 10 million changes that need to be done. But it's like, again, but at the same time, it comes back to the team aspect. You have your clients, you have your creatives, you have your account team, and then you have your vendor. You're all, again, working toward the same goal. Mm-hmm. You're all trying to do the same thing, and it's make the best possible end product there is.
Yeah.
And again, that way the clients are happy, that way the creatives' visions met, that way the account team's happy, and that way you guys are happy because you're like, we made some great freaking work. You know?
That's good. I was going to kind of on the stuff that we've been cutting in the office lately, kind of a question of like, what do you see as the biggest need in film, either commercial or Hollywood or anything like that? It's a very broad question and take that any way that you want it. But even like looking for production companies, like what is the biggest need or hole that you see there that you would like to see more of, that you would like to see like changed?
Well, this is a good question. We have to think on this for a second.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, Cole will clip this all up and create a really awesome montage of like a thinking montage.
Yeah.
The camera's on, right?
Yeah. Jeopardy music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Could be here all
a
day.
Slow Ken Burns.
Yeah. Yeah. There we go. I'll say this. Similar to what, and I'll tie it back into the short film that we did. So you got to understand, like with Hollywood and even advertising, they can be looked at kind of like as machines. You know, they're not pushing boundaries as much as they used to, and they're starting to a little bit more. That's why everyone loves A24, but it's all watered down in my opinion, and that's a whole conversation for another day. That can spark a lot. That can spark a lot. Don't get me wrong, it's good. Most of their stuff is really good, but there's not as much risk taking and open risk taking the bigger you get. And that's understandable because it's like, look, it's at the end of the day, it is a business. It's our advertising business, marketing business, film business. Like, people have to make money and their products have to sell. Like, that's the core of it. And our job is to promote that and do that, at least on the advertising side. Same even on the film side. It's like you're promoting your story, you know? But at the same time, you're not seeing as many risks taken. And I think what will happen and what I hope will happen, and again, what we try to do with Sheep Hills is tell a more gritty, real story that can relate to a lot of people, that a lot of people can relate to. And if you look back at like the 70s in terms of filmmaking, you like Texas Chainsaw and Taxi Driver and like all those movies that were like the non-traditional, there's a name for the group. It was like the Scorseses and all them that came in at the time. And bad film major, I can't remember what I was taught in class. Someone will comment it. Yeah, exactly. They were the low budget, big risk takers, but they had enough of a budget to make what they wanted to make. Whereas nowadays, it's like if budgets are getting smaller, which seems to be the case in both industries, unless you're X amount of people or whomever. But how can you, and this again, this can also come back to producing, how can you make that money go the furthest for telling and making great stories, great content, great whatever? And again, not to say don't pay people or anything like that, but it's like write stories, work on stories that are going to really touch on the world today. And like, if you got shit to say it. Like, you know, don't let, in the Hollywood sense, don't let some studio exec tell you no kind of thing. Like, it's funny, and I don't know if we can put this in or not, but I just saw something popped out this morning on, I forget what I was reading, but like Issa Rae and Denis Villeneuve, I think is how you say his last name, just came out and they're like, this is the most conservative group of Hollywood execs I've ever seen, like across the board. And no one is taking risks anymore because, and that's the thing, if you look at Hollywood, and again, there's another hot take, it's like, it's all corporations now. I mean, Paramount's getting sold, like, or up for sale, and Warner's was then taken over now by Discovery, and it's all, they're like, it's all dollars and cents. And so I think you're going to see a lot of concern. Don't get me wrong, you're still going to get those great movies and TV shows out there nowadays. But I think that can also tie in advertising a little bit. Like, everyone's looking for new, fun things, but at the same time, like, sometimes people kind of go back to like, okay, what works?
Play it safe.
You play it safe. Luckily, I haven't seen that. Or been seeing less of it. I've been seeing more, I'll say this, I've been seeing a lot more openness to trying new things. and risk taking, which is great, but it's like, again, that can always change tomorrow. It'd be like, okay, that didn't work. So,
Right.
So that's the thing. It's like, just be the more openness to risks. And again, they're not all going to be home runs, and just know that as long as you know that going in, then you got nothing to lose.
And when one hits, it's going to feel really good.
Exactly. Yeah. It's going to feel amazing. Yeah.
So what you're saying, essentially, you know, what it sounds like is like, there's big budgets, and underneath those big budgets, you got to hit a home run. But there's room in a content space, and since a lot of things are interactive or online, that, you know, maybe the sell to clients can be like, it's worth the risk here. Let's try something a little bit riskier. Because I think from the vendor side, just speaking from our side of things, like, we want to take some risks.
Totally.
You know, we're down to do it. And when I hear you say stretch $1, I'm like, man, I wish we'd have shot a third day in Montana.
Yeah, right. I know, right? I know.
Yeah. And there's things like that where it's like you said, everything's 20/20 in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
It always is in production, right?
Yep.
But I think, you know, if we wanted to put a bow, you know, on this episode, I really feel like, you know, I heard tactical empathy, being vulnerable, reciprocating what you get out there in the market, and that you know, from a filmmaking perspective, it will be good to take risks.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good way to sum it up. I think, yeah, just to kind of keep tying it up here, it's like, yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say is, so when I was in film school, the whole thing was like, I want to be a director, I want to do this, and now a producer. Like, don't put the blinders on too early. If there's like any younger kids or whomever listening to this that want to go into like production, because I always said, like, I don't want to go work in like advertising, or like, I want to go to Hollywood. Like, I'm gonna be doing the big.
Movies.
I'm gonna make movies. I want to make movies. I will say this: I still am going to make movies. That is gonna happen. But as I said earlier, it's like, I'm getting my reps in right now, and it's like, okay, I know where I need to get better at. Always be open to improving your skills, because you're never gonna be, even if you, again, going to Cannes, do the stuff, like, it feels great, but that's a cherry on top of the whole thing. Like, that's a little tiny thing. Then again, enjoy it while you're there. Enjoy any accolades you get, because again, they might be the last ones you get. So always enjoy them, but don't, as they say, rest on your laurels. Okay, great, you did that. What's next? And so that's something, like, always be looking for what's next. Be open to taking risks. But the last thing I'll say too is a little bit different in advertising, because it's like, if you're there, it's your job. You always have to do that, but always strive to make it the best. But on the filmmaking side, to go back to there for producing, don't get into something just because someone asked you to do it, or like they have a script that you like, kind of like, because it's going to take up your time. Like, find stories you want to tell and go make those, but give it 100%. Like, make sure you have as much fiery passion for it as possible, because that's what's going to make the best story possible at the end of the day, because that's going to make you, when you are grinding it out on set, or grinding it out in pre-production, or grinding it out in the 15th hour of post, like, that's what's going to make it worth it. Because if you don't care about it, you're not going to care at all, and it's going to show, because you're just going to kind of half-ass it, to put it that way. So make sure you're fully committed. And then, so on the switch to advertising front real quick, you're not going to love everything you get. That's just the nature of the beast, but that's just work. But make the best out of everything you do still, because even if it is something that's going on YouTube, that's like a much, I'll just say, smaller thing, like, people will still see it. And if it sucks, like, that's not good. You know, like, that's not good. That's not a good look on you. That's not a good look on your agency. Not a good look on your client. So make sure you are always putting your best foot forward on this stuff, because again, there are going to be days where it's not fun. That's just the nature of working in production. Like, there are some grind out days, but at the end of the day, as I always kind of like to say, I'd rather be doing this than selling insurance. So
there you go.
Not to diss any insurance salesmen out there. I'm sure they have a great career, but yeah.
Well, and even like, you don't know like who's going to be talking about the small stuff either. All it takes is like that one referral of like doing the small work like really well.
100%.
Keeping your character through the work, and like, obviously there's levels of care, but how you approach each piece, big or small, will show. Yeah. Just like you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, give your all, get ready for some crazy days ahead, but it's fun. Producing's fun, man. Like, when you get the fun stuff, you're like, there's no better day.
It rocks.
There's no better,
Yeah.
like, there's no better feeling, no better day than like when you're on set and it's just flowing and everything's going great. And it's just like, it's like make believe. It's just like, especially if you like, again, I dreamed of it as a kid. And it's like every time I see it, I'm like, this is great. No matter what it is. It's just, you just got to have fun with it. And you'll know when you're having fun and you'll know if you're not. That's why it's like, you'll know when to switch. But yeah, it's so much fun.
Sweet.
Should we grab some lunch?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Really good, man.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Follow us on socials. We'll have links to connect with Max, but we're excited. Continue to join us in the conversation. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to engage with you and hear what you thought about this episode. But for now, we will see you later. Catch you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.